Welcome to Silverstone for round 9, where some of the cars mistakenly started on dry tyres in this wet race, but there was a mandatory pit stop so everyone had the free opportunity to switch to wet tyres. Impressively, it was Blair in his first race of the season in pole position, driving the blue Audi. Whitlock in second had overtaken Blair, but ran off track and handed the position back. The drivers gave each other lots of room, which I think was critical not to cause a bad incident at the start, but there were some minor incidents on lap 1, with the first being Alves contacting the back of Rees, and then catching the side of Dan Shade. Fortunately, not much harm was done. So Blair in his first race was leading, just ahead of our championship leader Whitlock. Panda with an average result of 13th was looking very good in third. Friesen, who was second in the championship, was running 5th. Fukara spun at the back and McAdams crashed, but avoided any major damage. On board with Tim Shade, and it was Wolf getting sideways, leading to Rees having his bumpers bumped. It was a 35 lap race, but several drivers had started on slicks and changed to wet tyres in the first 3 laps, including Polo on lap 1, Alves, Collis, Tripod, McAdams and Wolf on lap 2, and Whitlock, Panda, Rees, Rasmussen, Jones and Kapelke on lap 3. Unfortunately, McAdams pitted again for a stop and go penalty. Before Jones had pitted, he was running well in 4th, but had a couple of spins, losing several positions. He was likely one of the drivers starting on the wrong tyre. After exiting the pits in 15th, he regained consistency and worked his way back up the field. On lap 3, Rasmussen was in 5th and dropped to 10th after ending up sideways, but he avoided the wall. Bowser behind had worse luck, smacking the wall, probably picking up some suspension damage, which certainly wouldn't help in a wet race. But surprisingly, his car was still drivable. Pitch wasn't having much luck, still behind the pack, having started late and had a crash. Kapelke had already done a pit stop, and on lap 4 he crashed and retired from the race. A similar thing happened to Fukara in 7th, resulting in significant suspension damage. Fukara would have a few spins and crashes, doing 2 pit stops and losing a lot of positions, but completed most of the race distance. Collis had done a pit stop and his car was looking unstable. He lost a few positions because of that stability issue before retiring on lap 7. On lap 8, Panda had a slight crash, nudging the barrier, but a few moments after recovering from that ended up sideways and took a pit stop. Panda would have a few spins and unfortunately took 3 pit stops, dropping from 9th to 17th. Bowers was in 3rd by lap 10, which was a very good running position for him, but a spin up against the barrier led to him waiting safely to turn around. He only lost 2 positions at that moment, but critically lost time against cars that had already done their pit stop. When he exited the pits for his mandatory pit stop, he found himself in 14th. The weather only seemed to get worse as the race went on. Tripod, despite being on wet tyres, had an unfortunate crash, spinning on the curb. Fortunately, Tripod's car didn't seem to pick up much damage. Many of the drivers had a spin at some point, including Blair running in the lead, having this spin on lap 13, and another on lap 18. He didn't lose any positions at the time, but he hadn't yet done his pit stop. Rasmussen was another driver that lost grip around this time, having a bad crash on lap 14, leading to his first retirement of the season. There was even more drama on lap 14, as Fukara's car violently snapped while running behind Dan Shade. Fukara had just been overlapped by Dan Shade, so they weren't fighting for position, and it just meant less downforce for Fukara being that close. Portis had just passed that incident and got shunted by Jones. Jones waited for Portis to retake the position, and both of their cars looked drivable, but Fukara arrived just as Portis rejoined the track. The two collided, with Fukara ending up off track, while Portis more or less got away with it. Fukara's car looked undrivable at that point, going straight into the wall a few moments after rejoining the track. Replaying the collision between them, first from Fukara's view, with slow cars on either side, and Fukara being 1 lap behind them. And the view from Portis, with Jones clearly waiting for Portis to get underway again. I'm tempted to say that everyone could have been a bit more careful in that chain of events. On lap 16, Wolf had a couple of spins in 13th and lost some positions. On board with Dan Shade on lap 17 and he had a spin but got away with it, although Hosick had unlapped himself. but Hosick had a few spins, including this one, which costed him a few positions. Also on that lap, Whitlock had finally caught Gould to take second, but Gould had done well running in second, having been running last at the start of the race, critically starting on wet tyres, and had remained consistent. After Gould took his mandatory pit stop, he dropped to 11th. Our race leader Blair had taken his pit stop at the end of lap 18, but this is where his spins would impact his race. He didn't have enough of a gap behind to hold on to the lead. Not only did he lose the lead to Whitlock, but Friesen and Tim Shade also went past before he exited the pits. They had all done their pit stops, so despite his pole position and getting the fastest lap, Blair was down to 4th. Tripod and Wolf had a collision. Wolf more or less got away with it, but unfortunately Tripod's car had really bad mid-corner instability after that. I think the stewards had a good look at that one after the race. Once again it was the menacing black helmet of Whitlock at the controls of the unstoppable beast that is the Bentley, crossing the line to win another race. This was Whitlock's 6th win of the season, further extending his championship lead, and joined on the podium by Friesen and Tim Shade. But the drama still wasn't over, as Wolf had a spin just before the end, then suddenly found himself defending track position against Bowers and Polo. Rees had already overlapped them, but the trio crossed the line battling over 11th. The result was given to Bowers, with Polo in 12th and Wolf in 13th. Rees in his second race got 5th. Blair landed on his feet, finishing 4th, with both pole position and the fastest lap. Not bad for his first race of the season. There were good points for the Shade Bros, as Dan Shade finished 6th. Gould had his best result in 9th. On the provisional team standings, the Bentley team has a strong lead, with the Shade Bros emerging in 2nd. So that was our dramatic race at Silverstone, and we'll be doing highlights again for our next round at Barcelona, so we hope to see you then.